For millennia, humanity invented increasingly sophisticated ways to communicate, from grunts to hieroglyphs to broadband fiber optics. Yet 5 seconds of silence in a casual conversation can still reduce an otherwise competent adult to a stammering, self-conscious imbecile. It's a bizarre social paradox. The absence of sound, a primal universal state, somehow triggers a disproportionate cascade of anxiety, transforming potential connection into an emotional void of terror. If you find value in deciphering these inconvenient truths about human behavior and reclaiming control over your social interactions, consider subscribing. We dissect the psychological mechanisms no one else dares to touch. We've been conditioned to interpret this quiet as a social catastrophe, a glaring indicator of conversational ineptitude, or worse, mutual disinterest. The very air thickens, the internal monologue accelerates, demanding immediate verbal intervention, regardless of quality or relevance. Our brains scream, fill the void, any void, just make noise. This instinct, however, is not some trivial modern affectation. It traces its roots deep into our evolutionary past, a neurobiological alarm bell that once served a vital purpose. In a tribal environment, sudden silence often signaled a threat, the approach of a predator, the shift in a social dynamic requiring immediate attention, or the dreaded communal disapproval. The individual who failed to attune to these subtle shifts, including the absence of expected vocalizations, risked ostracization or worse. Thus, our modern discomfort with silence is, in a perverse way, a hyperactive relic of a survival mechanism, now catastrophically misapplied to the innocuous setting of a coffee shop or a first date. But what if this perceived weakness, this universally dreaded conversational dead end, is actually the most potent, most overlooked tool for forging profound connection? What if the awkward silence is, in fact, an open invitation, a psychological lever waiting to be pulled, rather than a social landmine to be skirted? The real mechanism isn't what you think. It's a profound misinterpretation. We are about to uncover the specific psychological switch that transforms this terrifying void into an unshakable bridge. The ingrained dread of silence isn't merely a cultural artifact. It's a complex interplay of inherited neurobiology and relentless societal conditioning. Our amygdala, the almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep within the temporal lobe responsible for processing fear and threat, remains acutely sensitive to deviations from expected auditory patterns. A sudden cessation of speech, particularly in an interactive context, can register as an anomalous event, triggering a subtle subconscious stress response. Cortisol levels may inconspicuously rise, prompting that familiar tightening sensation in the chest. This ancient alarm system, finely tuned over millennia to detect the rustle of a predator in the bushes or the sudden withdrawal of a protective group, now fires indiscriminately when Uncle Barry pauses for too long between anecdotes. Culturally, Western societies, particularly those influenced by post-Enlightenment emphasis on rationality and verbal articulation, have aggressively promoted the idea that constant conversation equals engagement, intelligence, and social dexterity. From childhood, we are implicitly taught that active participation means speaking. Silence is often equated with shyness, lack of knowledge, or even rudeness. The boardroom often values quick verbal responses over thoughtful pauses. The media celebrates verbose personalities. This pervasive always-be-talking mandate creates immense pressure, forcing individuals into a perpetual performance, a theatrical display of conversational competence. The economic impact is subtle but pervasive. Perceived fluency and quick-wittedness in verbal exchanges can open doors to promotions, better social networks, and enhanced negotiating power. Conversely, those who struggle with rapid-fire conversation or who prefer quiet contemplation can be marginalized, their insights overlooked simply because they don't conform to the cultural pace. This creates a vicious cycle. The fear of silence leads to less authentic, more superficial exchanges, which in turn reinforces the belief that silence is dangerous, preventing the very kind of deep connection people crave. Our inherent wiring, combined with this cultural programming, systematically misleads us, turning a neutral phenomenon into an adversarial force. Yet, beyond the cacophony of words and the anxiety of their absence, lies a richer, more profound language of human connection, one that operates largely in the silent, often overlooked spaces between sentences. Neurobiology reveals that genuine rapport isn't primarily forged through semantic content, but through a symphony of nonverbal cues. Our mirror neurons, a fascinating class of brain cells, activate not only when we perform an action, but also when we observe someone else performing it, essentially allowing us to simulate their experience internally. This forms the bedrock of empathy. During moments of shared, comfortable silence, when verbal clutter is removed, these mirror systems can synchronize more effectively, facilitating a deeper, subconscious understanding. Similarly, the release of oxytocin, often dubbed the bonding hormone, is not solely contingent on verbal affirmations. It's powerfully stimulated by sustained eye contact, synchronized breathing, and a shared sense of psychological safety. All elements amplified by the deliberate, confident use of silence. The vagal nerve, which plays a crucial role in regulating our rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system, can also be calmed by a non-anxious presence, allowing for greater emotional regulation and a deeper sense of connection between individuals. Experts often cite that nonverbal communication accounts for anywhere from 70% to 93% of the total message transmitted in an interaction. This silent language encompasses everything from micro-expressions and posture shifts to pupil dilation and respiration rates. When we are caught in the grip of conversational anxiety, desperately trying to fill silence with words, we often override or completely miss these crucial nonverbal signals. We become so focused on our internal monologue of what to say next that we become deaf and blind to the richer stream of information flowing from the other person. The hidden mechanics of true connection, therefore, hinge not on the absence of silence, but on its intelligent, intentional presence. It's not about avoiding the void, but about consciously stepping into it, transforming it from a psychological threat into a powerful amplifier of genuine, unspoken resonance. This is where the profound psychological switch truly lies, waiting to be leveraged. The profound psychological switch, the core technique for transforming awkward silence into instant connection, is known as the strategic pause. This is not merely a cessation of speech, nor an accidental conversational dead end. It is a deliberate, calibrated micro-moment of intentional quiet, typically lasting between 2 and 5 seconds, deployed with confidence and purpose. Its mechanism is deceptively simple but incredibly potent. When you introduce a strategic pause, you create a momentary cognitive load on the other person. Their brain, accustomed to the immediate gratification of verbal exchange, is suddenly presented with an unexpected blank space. This prompts a deeper, subconscious processing. Rather than reacting impulsively, they are subtly encouraged to reflect, to access more profound thoughts, or to articulate a more considered response. This signals not desperation, but profound confidence. It projects a silent authority, a comfortable mastery of the interaction. You are essentially communicating non-verbally, I am so secure in this interaction and in myself that I do not need to fill every millisecond with noise. I am genuinely listening, genuinely present, and I invite you to be the same. In high-stakes environments, the strategic pause shifts the power dynamic. In sales, it allows the client to articulate their true needs beyond the superficial objections. In negotiations, it can draw out a counterparty's hidden concessions. In therapy, it provides the client the necessary space to delve into deeper emotional terrain. On a first date, it elevates the conversation beyond superficial banter, forcing a more authentic engagement. The 2-second rule, in particular, is an empirically observed phenomenon. A pause of just 2 seconds, if held with relaxed confidence and engaged eye contact, typically prompts the other person to re-engage, often with a more substantial contribution, or to seek clarification, thus deepening the interaction. It's an elegant, almost counterintuitive maneuver. You intentionally create a vacuum, not to create distance, but to draw the other person closer, compelling them to fill it with more of themselves. This is the precise, actionable answer to the open loop, the lever that transmutes dread into discovery. Mastery of the strategic pause extends beyond simply counting seconds. It's an art form rooted in absolute presence and refined nonverbal communication. The efficacy of the pause is entirely dependent on how you hold it. A pause delivered with nervous fidgeting, darting eyes, or an anxious frown will amplify awkwardness, confirming the other person's worst fears. Conversely, a strategic pause executed with relaxed posture, open body language, and consistent, empathetic eye contact communicates a powerful message. I am fully present. I am listening. I am patient. I am not judging. This subtle calibration of nonverbal cues transforms the silence from a threat into an invitation, a psychological safe harbor. The ripple effect of this intentional quiet is profound. By granting another person the space to think, feel, and respond without immediate pressure, you foster an environment of psychological safety. This safety is the bedrock of trust, encouraging deeper vulnerability and more authentic self-disclosure. People are not merely responding to your words, they are reacting to your presence, your capacity to hold space for them. The strategic pause essentially reconfigures the entire conversational dynamic. It shifts from a frantic exchange of information, a battle to avoid the dreaded void, to a collaborative exploration, a shared journey into understanding. The profound irony, then, is that the very thing we've been conditioned to dread, the awkward silence, is precisely the most potent, most overlooked mechanism for achieving what we most crave: genuine, unshakable connection. It compels authenticity. It demands presence. It strips away the superficial veneer of polite conversation and forces both parties to engage on a deeper, often unspoken level. By mastering this counterintuitive technique, you transform an external social anxiety into an internal strength, demonstrating that true power in communication often lies not in what is said, but in the deliberate, confident, and empathetic embrace of what is not said, turning a perceived void into the ultimate psychological bridge.